Every week I get some version of the same phone call. Guys looking at two cars in a driveway, same age, same mileage. One says Toyota on the trunk, one says Lexus. And he wants to know if the second one is worth 20 grand more than the first. After 20 some years, turning wrenches on both badges, side by side, on the same lift, I can finally give you a straight answer instead of a marketing brochure. And the answer at 200,000 miles is more interesting than most people expect, because these two brands are not as different as the price tags make them look, and they're not as similar as the dealership will tell you either. Let's start with the part nobody argues about. Underneath the sheet metal, a Toyota and a Lexus are frequently the same car. The Lexus ES and the Toyota Camry ride on the same platform and share powertrains. The Lexus NX and the Toyota RAV4 share their bones and much of their drivetrain. The Lexus RX and the newer Lexus TX share the same TNGA-K platform underneath the Toyota Grand Highlander. Even the smaller Lexus UX borrows heavily from the same architecture that underpins the Corolla. When a customer brings me a Lexus with an unfamiliar problem, 90% of the time I already know the fix because I diagnosed the exact same failure on a Toyota the week before, just with a different badge on the steering wheel. That's not a knock on Lexus. That's Toyota Motor Corporation being smart, because Lexus was built from day one to take Toyota's proven engineering and dress it up, not to reinvent it. So if the engine, the transmission, and the frame are frequently identical, why does the sticker price jump by $10,000 to $20,000? That's where the two brands actually earn their separate names, and it comes down to what you can't see as much as what you can. A Lexus derivative of a shared platform gets meaningfully more sound-deadening material packed into the doors, the floor pan, and the firewall. Engineers spend extra time tuning the suspension bushings and the steering feel so the car rides quieter and feels more isolated from the road. The interior materials are a step up, the fit and finish tolerances are tighter, and the dealership experience is built around treating you like the car cost what it actually costs. None of that shows up on a compression test. All of it shows up the moment you close the door and realize how much less road noise makes it into the cabin. Now here's where it gets genuinely complicated and where I have to correct what most car channels tell you. The common assumption is that Lexus is simply the more reliable version of Toyota, full stop, end of story. The data doesn't actually support that as cleanly as people think. J.D. Power's most recent dependability study, which tracks real reported problems on 3-year-old vehicles, put Lexus at the very top of the entire industry, with about 151 problems per 100 vehicles, while Toyota landed further down the list at around 185 problems per 100 vehicles. But flip over to Consumer Reports, which builds its reliability picture from owner surveys, weighted by how serious each issue actually is, and Toyota comes out ahead of Lexus. Two respected studies, two different winners. What that tells me, after doing this job long enough to stop trusting any single chart, is that the gap between these two brands is a lot narrower than the price difference suggests. And a huge amount of what separates a good Lexus from a good Toyota experience comes down to which specific model you're talking about, not the badge itself. I had a customer, a woman named Carla, bring in her Lexus ES350 at right around 198,000 miles for what she assumed was going to be an expensive diagnosis. Check engine light, slight rough idle on cold starts. Turned out to be a carbon buildup issue on the intake valves, the same exact failure pattern I see constantly on Toyota Camrys and Avalons running the same direct-injected V6 because it's essentially the same engine family under a different name. The fix, the parts, the labor time, all of it lined up almost dollar for dollar with what I'd charge a Camry owner. The only real difference was that her Lexus dealership had quoted her almost double what I charged her, purely because Lexus service centers price their labor rate for a luxury clientele, not because the actual repair was harder. That labor rate difference is the single biggest thing people underestimate when they're deciding between these brands. Mechanically, a Lexus at 200,000 miles wears in almost the same pattern as its Toyota twin. Water pumps on the shared V6 engines tend to weep coolant somewhere in the 120,000 to 160,000 mile range on both brands equally, Timing chain tensioners on the four-cylinder engines start to rattle on cold startup around the same mileage window whether you're driving an NX or a RAV4. Cabin air filters, spark plugs, transmission fluid intervals. None of that cares what badge is on the hood. What changes is what it costs you to fix it. Genuine Toyota parts ordered through a Toyota dealer run noticeably cheaper than the equivalent Lexus branded part, even when it's physically the same component off the same supplier line, because Lexus dresses up the packaging and charges for the name. Independent shops like mine can often source the identical Toyota part number for a Lexus repair and save the customer real money, but plenty of Lexus owners don't know that's even an option, so they pay retail luxury pricing for a part that costs a fraction of that at a Toyota parts counter. Where the two brands genuinely diverge, and where I tell people to pay attention, is in the systems that exist on the Lexus and simply don't exist on the equivalent Toyota. Air suspension is the big one. Certain Lexus models, particularly in the LS and GX lineups over the years, have offered adaptive air suspension systems that their Toyota counterparts never had. Air suspension rides beautifully when it's healthy, but the air suspension compressor and the air struts themselves are wear items that Toyota owners literally never have to think about, because the equivalent Toyota rides on conventional coil springs and shocks. When that compressor starts cycling too often or an air strut develops a slow leak, you're looking at a repair bill that can run well into four figures, and that's a cost that exists purely because the car is a Lexus. Adaptive cruise control hardware, more elaborate infotainment processors, additional sound insulating glass, heated and ventilated seat mechanisms with more complex wiring harnesses, all of that is extra hardware layered onto a proven Toyota foundation, and every layer of extra hardware is one more thing that can eventually fail, and one more thing that costs Lexus money to fix when it does. If you made it this far, then consider liking this video, giving it a thumbs up, and subscribing to my channel. This helps me bring you more honest car advice. Let's talk real numbers on what ownership actually costs over time, because this is where a lot of the Lexus premium starts to make more sense than people expect. Based on maintenance cost data compiled over a 10-year ownership window, the average Toyota owner spends somewhere around $6,000 total on maintenance and repairs, while the average Lexus owner spends closer to $7,800 over that same span. That's not a small gap, but it's also nowhere near double, and it's dramatically better than what you'd pay owning a German luxury brand over the same period, where 10-year costs routinely approach or exceed $10,000. RepairPal's data tells a slightly different story depending on how you slice it, showing Lexus owners actually paying less per year on average than the broader industry average, in part because Lexus vehicles need fewer shop visits per year and have a lower rate of the repair turning into something severe and expensive. So depending on which data set you trust, Lexus either costs a little more than Toyota, or on a strict per visit basis, costs about the same as a well-built mainstream car. What both data sets agree on is that neither brand is going to bankrupt you the way a BMW or a Mercedes-Benz will at high mileage. I had a guy named Danny come through my shop with a Lexus RX 350 sitting at 214,000 miles, and a Toyota Highlander customer, different guy, same week, sitting at 209,000 miles. Same 3.5-liter V6 family, same basic transmission logic, same TNGA-K bones under the newer versions of these two. Danny's RX needed a valve cover gasket replacement and a set of upper control arm bushings that had gone soft. The Highlander needed nearly the identical repair 2 weeks later, valve cover gasket, control arm bushings, almost the exact same failure mileage window. The difference in what they paid came down entirely to Lexus branded parts versus Toyota branded parts and the shop labor rate, not the actual mechanical work involved. That's the pattern I see over and over on these shared platform vehicles once they cross the 200,000 mile mark. The failure points are nearly identical. The invoice is not. Where Lexus genuinely starts to earn its keep at high mileage is in the areas Toyota never tried to compete in to begin with. Interior wear is a big one. I've had Lexus interiors at 220,000 miles that still look and feel tight, with door seals that haven't sagged, dash materials that haven't gone brittle from UV exposure, and stitching on the seats that hasn't started to fray. while the equivalent age Toyota sitting in my lot with similar mileage is already showing worn bolster fabric on the driver's seat and a dashboard that started to develop that slightly sun-baked texture. That's a direct result of Lexus using higher-grade leather, better foam density in the seat cushions, and UV-resistant coatings on interior plastics that Toyota simply doesn't spec into its mainstream trim levels. Road noise is another one that holds up remarkably well over time. That extra sound deadening material I mentioned earlier doesn't degrade much with mileage, so a 200,000-mile Lexus ES still rides noticeably quieter on the highway than a 200,000-mile Camry with the same drivetrain underneath it, wind noise and tire roar included. Now let's talk about the part most YouTube videos skip entirely, which is what actually breaks differently between these two brands once you get past 200,000 miles. Because it's not always in Lexus's favor. Some Lexus models add turbocharged four-cylinder engines to platforms where the Toyota version stuck with a naturally aspirated engine, chasing extra horsepower for that luxury performance feel. Turbocharged engines run hotter, carry more boost pressure through the intake system, and put more stress on the internal components over time than a comparable naturally aspirated engine doing the same job. I've pulled turbochargers off Lexus NX models with sticky wastegates and worn turbo bearings at mileage where the naturally aspirated RAV4 sitting next to it in my lot hadn't touched its air intake system yet. That's a case where Lexus added complexity in the name of performance, and complexity is never free at high mileage, regardless of what badge is on the trunk lid. So where does that leave you if you're standing in a driveway right now trying to decide, and the price difference is very real money sitting between two nearly identical cars? Here's how I'd actually think about it from someone who has to fix both of them for a living, not sell them. If your priority is the lowest possible cost per mile over 200,000 miles, and you don't care about ambient cabin noise or seat leather that still looks new a decade in, buy the Toyota. The parts are cheaper, the labor rate at an independent shop is cheaper, and mechanically, you are getting the same engineering underneath. If you spend a meaningful amount of time in the car, if road noise genuinely bothers you on long highway drives, if you want an interior that's going to age gracefully instead of just functionally, and if you're comfortable paying a bit more in maintenance and parts to get it, the Lexus Premium buys you something real, not just a badge. Just go in knowing exactly what you're paying for. You are not buying a more reliable engine. In most cases, you are literally buying the same engine. You are buying more sound insulation, better materials, a smoother ride, and in some trims, extra hardware like air suspension that adds comfort now and adds repair risk later. The mistake I see people make most often isn't picking the wrong brand. It's paying Lexus dealership prices for a repair that an independent shop familiar with the shared Toyota platform could have done for half the cost using the exact same part off a different shelf. If you already own a Lexus and you're nervous about the bill, once you cross that 200,000 mile mark, find a shop that works on both brands and ask them straight up whether the part you need has a Toyota equivalent, because more often than you'd think, the answer is yes, and that one question can save you real money without touching the quality of the repair at all. If you're enjoying this video, consider watching this one, where I'm sharing the exact mileage points where Toyota and Lexus engines start needing real attention, and what to check before it turns into a 5-figure repair bill.